Hey guys, this is Nick Bratton and Sam Uline from Bratton Sports Performance. So today we are going to use this video to address and talk about Olympic lifting and sprinting, and talk about some of the similarities but also some of the differences. So if you guys have followed anything that we've done on our social media platforms, we talk a lot about our sprint training, different tools that we use, but we've talked recently about a lot of our Olympic lifting and the variations and movements that we use with that. So I think that it's created a little bit of confusion from the standpoint that I think some of our athletes believe that these are two separate entities and you do one or the other, or one has one purpose and another is targeting something else. But I want to talk about how we kind of use both of these with all of our athletes. So as we go through this, the first similarity that I want to talk about is just from a physiological standpoint. So as we go through this, as we go through the physiological demands, first of all, I just want to talk about the nervous system. So from the nervous system standpoint, these are both very, very explosive movements. So they are going to require some level of elasticity throughout the body. Going to rely on that Golgi tendon, that spring action within the movement. But we're also going to rely on the body's ability to just recover quickly within these movements. So from an energy system standpoint, these aren't things that we use for conditioning or to help our athletes prepare for the season from a duration standpoint, but really just the power and the explosiveness as we go through those movements.
So our next topic that we're going to cover that's going to be a similarity is going to be triple extension. So this is something that you'll see within an Olympic lift as well as our sprinting. So again, this is something that we're using in one, and it's also a tool for the other. So when we talk about triple extension that you've probably seen in one of our past videos or social media posts, we're talking about that extension of the hip, knee, and ankle. So you'll see an Olympic lifter going through the pull, and you'll notice he's going to be in triple extension, as well as our sprinter. When they reach the end of their stride, they'll be in that triple extension as well. So
the next topic I want to talk about, and I kind of left off with this, was the power and the explosiveness. Now, sprinting and Olympic lifting are two of the most explosive movements that we can go through. Now, we can throw some of our plyometric movements in there, potentially bounding, med ball movements, different things like that. But for the most part, generally, sprinting and Olympic lifting are going to be two of the fastest. Now, we also have the ability to manipulate the positions that we go through, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But just from an explosiveness standpoint, we can adjust kind of where we're going from in order to be specific to our athletes.
So another similarity we're going to talk about is the different starting positions. So talking about our Olympic lifter, we might start from above the knee and work our way down from below the knee and then to the floor eventually. And then talking about our sprinters, we always begin with a tall falling start and eventually working our way to the bottom, to a top down kneeling, bottom up, and then eventually going to be a top of a push up. So again, these are all going to be progressions to start off with. But going based on sport, we might have someone that is often starting from the floor, or their ready position is typically lower compared to like a track athlete, which will be starting from a more top position for their top end work. So again, like our Olympic lifters, we can start from blocks, we can start from above the knee, below the knee, floor, and then again going from our sprinters. So just these comparisons that we can manipulate these positions.
So now I want to talk about some of the differences. So obviously here are a couple of areas where the movements can be similar, and they can be, if we just take away and we kind of hone in on the movements themselves, we talk about some of the ways that they're very similar. Now as we talk about the differences, so sprinting, this is going to be much faster, much more explosive than those Olympic lifts are going to be. If we're measuring them from a speed standpoint, our Olympic lifts aren't going to get much faster than 1.5 or maybe 2 meters per second, whereas our sprinting and our speed work can get upwards of 10, 11, 12 meters per second. So this is going to be much quicker as we go through those movements. It's also much easier to become sport specific with our sprinting. We can obviously manipulate our positions. We don't have to worry about a foreign object like a bar or weights inhibiting those movements. And so, we can talk about just the speed standpoint from a linear direction, but also laterally, how we get set up and how we take those next steps. So we've got the speed of the movement itself, we've got the starting positions that we go through, but also just the weight that we're using. It's a constant. And so because it is that constant as we go through our speed work, really we're able to really focus on our ability to manipulate our bodies, the positions that we're in, but even the environment when it comes down to our ability to use potentially hills or overspeed work, and we can use the environment itself to manipulate the exercise as opposed to maybe the weights that are being used.
So going into another difference, talking about the load that we were going through with sprinting, now moving it on to Olympic lifting. So again, if we're working with weights, we are able to change the load and change how much weight we're putting on that bar going through these explosive movements. So when we talk about creating force, obviously if we increase that weight, we're able to increase our force and eventually our power. So when we talk about different sports like football, for an example, we have to move another body. So we have to be able to move them and also take that force and absorb it. So when we talk about catching an Olympic lift, we're absorbing that force just because that load, changing that load.
So I hope with this video today, you guys kind of see how we use both of these tools within our training to kind of cater to our athletes. It's not that one sport, say football, has to use Olympic lifting, and another sport, say baseball, has to use sprinting. All of our athletes have an opportunity to use each of these, and it's important that they do use both of them. One of the things that we explain to all of our athletes and parents is we're building athletes, we're not building sport-specific individuals. So we use both of these as tools. Each individual is going to use a different percentage of each of these tools based on what they need and how they adapt to them. So again, we're going to put some links down in the comments below so you guys can check out some of the other articles, some of the other videos that we have up. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thanks.